from the old plantation non-stop. Fight, bill. Screams from the old plantation non-stop. Fight, bill. Screams from the old plantation non-stop. Fight, bill.
Well, I guess I go to get through it then. Welcome to the Plantation podcast, episode 10. I decided to go solo today for a couple of reasons. One, episode 10 is a bit of a milestone for me. I sort of started out this podcast and had an initial goal to reach at least 10 episodes. And, this one is it. When I was researching getting into podcast, there was a statistic that sort of stood out to me where at least 80% of new podcasters never hit the 10 episode mark and kind of fell through from there. So for me to hit this episode 10 is quite a milestone for me. So I'm pretty chuffed about it, I guess. But I'm also going to be using this episode as a way to sort of talk a little bit about sort of what I've been thinking and also sort of plans and updates for the channel, for the show, and so just my current experiences running a podcast and getting to this goal, or meeting this goal really. So I guess we'll start off with a channel update. So at the moment I've got quite a few. I think I've got 3 or 4 guests lined up, but unfortunately the studio got a bit flooded a couple of days ago, maybe close to 5 days ago. We had a pipe sort of crumble and quite a lot of water rushed out and sort of into our storage room. So that's all had to be moved out and it's all over the place. So as I'm recording this, I'm sitting in between all these bags and boxes, and the guest chair has a massive box full of our stuff on it. So currently out of commission at the moment, but it managed to make some space to at least get this recording down. So hopefully in the next couple of days I can fix up the studio again and have guests come back through. I'm kind of not really in the mood to sort of do it over Skype or do it over Messenger anymore. If I have no other choice, then I will. But I guess if I don't have to, I would rather have the guests come in themselves, which would be much more engaging for me, and I'm hoping much more engaging for the listeners. So also, I guess I would like to talk a little bit about my thoughts on podcasting at the moment. So hitting this milestone, it's and I've been reflecting back on the last couple of episodes that I've done, and it's been quite a journey so far. A lot of things has happened so quickly, and the support I've been getting on my actually on all my episodes really has been quite overwhelming, and I feel quite blessed to be able to sort of do this kind of work, because at the moment it's quite a fun hobby that I sort of picked up and didn't realize that it'll grow this quickly. I think I released my first episode in February, and since then I've seen consistent growth in sort of my viewings and downloads of the episodes. So I'm very lucky to have that. It's not an easy process. I initially came into this thinking it'll be quite straightforward. You'd have a guest come in, talk, chuck it up on the computer, and then share it out there. It's a little bit more complicated than that, obviously. And, you have to, first off, find a guest who's willing to give their time, their expertise, and their experience to come onto your show and talk about all that stuff. But also, you kind of have, as a host, you kind of have to have a topic in mind of why you're inviting this guest on. So I've had quite a lot of interesting and awesome guests come through my podcast so far. So I'm looking forward to having a lot more. And the editing side of things, I've never been a big person when it comes to editing. I'm actually quite a lazy person in that aspect. If I could get someone else to do it for me, I would. But I'm starting to look at it as part of the process. It's part of the process in making something that is mine, perfecting my art in a way. So I have to take the good and the bad. I really enjoy the conversations. I enjoy the interactions I have with my guests. I even enjoy the relationships that we've built post the interviews, and well, it's not really an interview. We'll post our episodes, So it's been very humbling, and I've been very blessed to have very awesome guests and very engaging guests thus far. And I also have to be mindful that I need to also put a little bit more effort into the editing and all that stuff, because at the end of the day, I want the episode to sound as authentic and as good and as amazing as it felt while I was in the middle of that conversation with that person. So some of the difficulties that I've been noticing at the moment is time, I guess. I'm finding it increasingly difficult to make time to have a guest over and record the podcast, chuck it up into the editing software, edit it down, get all the artwork together, and plus the promotion and stuff on Instagram. That is one of the biggest things I find difficult running a podcast show, is the actual process of getting it out there and not advertising isn't the word, promoting yourself, because at the end of the day, you want people to listen to these things because you find it interesting, because I find it interesting, and I think these conversations are worth listening to. So obviously trying to get it out there and trying to get different people to hear it and trying to get feedback on it is quite a chore. And I can see why you look at big shows and big podcast shows where they actually hire external people to sort of do the editing, do the marketing, and all that other stuff, because it's one of those things where if you can find a more efficient way of doing it, it actually frees you up a lot to do more of the podcasting and more of the shows. So that's one of the main things I've been finding difficult. Not to mention it's, I still work full time. I still need to fit time around my kids, time around with my family. But at the same time, I'm really trying to make an effort to make this something that I would like to make a priority. It is a very enjoyable thing for me to do. I find it very relaxing. I find it very engaging, and I've learned quite a lot through these very short 10 episodes that I've released. Well, 9 episodes really that I've released so far. So hopefully, hopefully I get to sort of change that in the future and become better and better at it, which I feel like I am. I feel like the editing is getting a little bit more easier. I feel like the flow of the episodes are getting a little bit more flowier, I guess. And I'm feeling more and more confident to reach out to guests that aren't family and aren't close friends, because I think the first my episodes thus far has been with family and very close friends, because I felt comfortable asking them to be on a show, which has been good, because it's allowed me to sort of practice getting out there and promoting myself and trying to sort of, I guess, get my perspectives and ideas, but also my guests' perspective and ideas out there for people to listen to, which I hope people haven't heard from in many other mediums of media at the moment. So, since I've started this podcast, I've been very lucky to run into some very supportive podcasters out there, specifically the guys at the West Net, who have been very kind to me and very supportive of sort of what I'm trying to achieve here. While at the same time, watching them grow has been very, very inspirational for me. So, I managed to somehow weasel my way onto their show not too long ago, which was a very interesting experience for me. Being on the other side of the conversation, where I wasn't the host and I wasn't directing the conversation. I was more there to sort of express, really what my ideas are and what my feelings are on certain topics and certain certain things that's happening in the world right now. And it was an interesting change of how I sort of been doing a podcast, because as a host, you feel like you are in control and there's a certain comfort that comes with control and being able to sort of direct the flow of the conversation and the topics of the conversation, as opposed to being a guest where you sort of waiting to see what the host would like to hear, or what the host is hoping to sort of get out of you for that episode. So um, it was a nice it was actually a nice change, because my first I was a guest first on the Zealous State of Mind podcast with Yash, and unfortunately I felt like I was quite nervous, so I spoke a lot. I said a lot of things, and said them in quite quick succession. So you know, but it was a good learning opportunity for me, really, because I was able to sort of really sit in the hot seat, shall we say, and experience that for the first time in an environment where it was friendly, supportive, and we had a really great time. We had a 2 hour 30 something minute podcast, and the entire time I didn't feel I mean obviously I was nervous at the beginning, but as the conversations continued to get really really good, I became very comfortable, and spoke freely about what I thought, and how I felt at the time. So, and then I was lucky enough to also be asked to be a guest on the Back of the 135 podcast, which is a group of guys I've been following for a long time. They're currently at episode 75, I think, and I've been following these guys since they were in their 30s. So, I was very lucky to sort of be asked on, and it was an amazing experience for me to be in their studio and to sort of talk to the hosts, Cams and Isaiah, and talk about the exact same things that I enjoy talking about. We think we went through a whole bunch of topics, which range from mental health. We went to politics. We went into the Black Lives Matter movement happening in New Zealand and in the States. We then switched it up, went into movies and all these other different things. And it made me realize how awesome this podcasting medium is, because when I look at interviews, that happen on TV, on the news, even just talk shows, you get you get the exposure, I'm guessing. When you sort of are there, you're talking with the host, they'll ask very specific questions and they want very specific answers. But there's no conversation. There's no real conversation. There's no organic sort of flow to sort of how they interact. It's very, this is my question, I want you to answer. And I guess that's built on the time limit on each talk show, the limitations to what you can ask and what you can't ask. And it comes down to timing, I guess, at the end of the day. While as podcasting, you have that freedom to sort of just ramble on and on and on and on about whatever topic that person may be feeling like talking about. He or she may be willing to talk about their experiences growing up in New Zealand, for example, and you're free to talk about that for a whole hour if you like, an hour plus. And you don't actually have to stick to one topic. You can jump from topic to topic, because there really isn't a specific way of doing a podcast. I know certain podcasts have specific aims, where maybe one will talk purely about technology, one may purely talk about gaming, something may talk about thrillers and all. I know there's really popular ones about murders that's happened in the past, and sort of crime stories. So obviously, whatever the aim of your podcast is, that's going to be the topic. But at the same time, there is still a lot of freedom in terms of how that sort of conversation can go. Not to mention, you are not restricted by rules or regulations or time or sort of a lot, really. The only thing I find is that sometimes people are a bit hesitant to express their real thoughts and feelings on certain topics. And that's for probably a whole range of things. Maybe they don't feel that their opinion is valid. Maybe they don't feel that their perspective is the norm. It may be controversial. I'm quite guilty of that. It may be just something that they feel is going to cause an argument. which most people don't really want to get into, especially if they are not in their not in their home or not in their sort of comfort zone. Because doing a podcast on someone else's show, you're in their home, you're either in their home or their studio, and it's foreign grounds for you. So not a lot of people are comfortable having arguments or debates, shall we say, as opposed to arguments, having debates about sort of a topic that you may sort of feel quite strongly about. I think what I've noticed in most podcasts that I've seen, been involved in, and done myself is that there is a certain trust in sort of the guest and between the guest and the host about what is, about what's being said. I don't think I've attacked anyone on my show so far, about sort of their beliefs, and I've allowed them that space to sort of express and sort of explain to me why they've come to this perspective or why they've come to this idea, and being able to sort of listen to that journey and to that guest as they sort of take you on that experience is something very interesting, because I don't think it happens often. I don't think people are as empathetic or as open to different ideas as they think they are. I think we pay a lot of lip service to people saying, I can see from your perspective, blah, 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 but I think your perspective is wrong, and this is why I think I'm correct. Now, that's useful in a debate. If you're in a debate trying to counteract someone's ideas and someone's perspective with all these different things, I think that's useful. What I'm trying to aim in these podcasts, and why a lot of other people who run podcasts are trying to frame it as a conversation, is that you're actually sharing ideas. You're not there to sort of discredit that person. That person's not there to discredit you. You're there to sort of share ideas and hopefully come to some common ground. And that kind of interaction is something that is missing quite evidently in our day-to-day society. You just have to look at social media, for example, and just see how fast people can just blast someone for saying something silly or sharing something stupid. People have the right to feel, to express what they think. But at the end of the day, if you're writing a post saying how shitty this thing is, you're not actually there to have a conversation. You're there to just shit on something and move on with your life. So at the end of the day, no one actually comes away learning anything. So, that's sort of something that I've been thinking about quite a lot lately, and what I'm going to be trying to do in future podcasts is make that conversation more evident. I think I have a lot to learn myself. I think listening back to my old episodes, I think I've noticed more and more that I may talk a bit too much and may be too keen to express my own opinion, whether it aligns with my guest or slightly deviates from what my guest is expressing at the time. One of my biggest criticisms of myself is learning how to listen to the other person more. I think because of the nature of the work that I do, a lot of it is listening to respond, listening to sort of, not the nature of the work that I do, but sort of what I've grown up doing, is more accurate, is that I used to listen to someone telling me something in a way, and listening so that I can respond to them. And that way I'm only taking the bits and pieces that I want to use as opposed to taking it as a whole. Since I've started working as a mental health nurse, a lot of my work has actually been around listening to someone's issues or problems or concerns, extrapolating that for them, and trying to, I guess, understand that on a more deeper level to see what's the origin or the triggers or the factors that influence that person to sort of feel or think this way. And I said it on many episodes before, is that that's actually transferred quite well into the podcasting world, where hearing the guest talk, I find it quite easy to sort of hear what they're saying and sort of see how they've sort of gotten to that perspective. But what I unfortunately do most of the time is that I'm so quick to express something that they may have said, or sort of agree with something that they've said, or bring up an ulterior um, idea that sort of go alongside, with what my guest said. So that's something I'm going to be working on quite seriously over the next couple of episodes. And I do think practice does make perfect. So we'll see how things go and progress as things go on. So I'd also like to talk a little bit about the future plans for my show. Um, at this point in time, I am purely I'm running it as a pure podcast where there's it's basically just audio being slightly edited with an intro outro, checking it up on my distribution sites, and then sending it out there to the world and then promoting it that way. I think at some point I'd like the show to evolve slightly, and by that I mean at the moment I'd like to have more guests on. Sometimes even multiple guests. I think at the moment I've only got two microphones, one for me and one for my guests. I'd probably like to purchase another two, so that I've got the capacity to have at least three guests on at a time if need be, or maybe have someone co-host the show with me, which would be very interesting. And also, as things start to progress forward, and if things continue to go well for me, I'm actually thinking of whether video is something that's viable for the show, and actually start using YouTube as another medium for me to sort of share the podcast and share these conversations that I have. Um, and I personally feel that the conversations I've been having with my guests have been quite enlightening and been very interesting. And looking at the amount of people that have been downloading the podcast, I'm obviously not alone in that. And I continue to see growth in that area. So fingers crossed that I get all this done, and that the plans work out for me. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not, then obviously I'm happy with that. At the moment, I'm enjoying doing a podcast, being involved in the podcasting community in New Zealand, quite thoroughly. And I'm hoping that it'll continue to get better and better with each episode that I release out there. So I'm going to use this. I guess I'm going to use this final time to sort of thank all the listeners and all the people who supported me going through this, especially my wife, who's always been behind me, encouraging me to sort of get this off the ground and just do it. She's always been my biggest supporter. So, I'd like to thank her especially for sort of being there for me, trying to get me to get off my lazy ass and do something productive. Because I think if it wasn't for her really, really forcing me to do this, it would still be at the drawing board, thinking about starting a podcast. So that I'm very lucky that she's been there, in my corner. But also like to, thank all the other people that's sort of been behind me and supporting me. The guys at the West Net have been amazing. Guys, Yush, Cam, Isaiah, they've always been very supportive of what I'm doing, and they've always reached out to me for things if need be, and I've been very lucky to be involved to some capacity with the guys. So I'd like to give a big shout out to those guys too. And most of all is the listeners. I can slowly see my audience growing with each new episode that I release. I see that the numbers they grow fast and faster with the amount of downloads, and so I'd like to thank you guys for sort of sticking with me and not sending me any negative press so far, and and generally just being very, very positive and supportive of the show. So thank you guys for that. Yeah, I guess that's sort of everything I wanted to talk about, really. I'm recording this, it's about 3 minutes to 11 on a Sunday night. I was sort of debating for myself whether I should do this or whether I should just leave it. I already have an episode lined up for next Monday, which is the 6th, and I was like, maybe I'll record my episode 10 and use it as an opportunity to just explain to people what's been happening so far with the show, and hopefully enlighten people a little bit about the process that's happening. So, um, yeah, yeah. So this has been a bit weird for me talking to myself. I work with a lot of people who talk to themselves all the time, and it's weird again to sort of be at the other end. Um, so yeah, it's been weird, and hopefully it hasn't been too weird for you guys who's listening in. Um, but I do appreciate you guys listening in anyway. I think I might call that a wrap. Really, I think that's kind of said everything I needed to say, and really, it was more just for updates for everyone about what's going on with the show. So yeah, thanks for listening in and sort of being a part of the Thought Plantation podcast. You can obviously find us on most of the main streaming medias: Apple, Google Play, Spotify, you name it. Shortly to be on YouTube. I was there for a while, but then I sort of moved the videos out because I wasn't really happy with the quality. They should be back up shortly, and fingers crossed, we can start doing a video. Adding video to the show. So yeah, feel free to drop me a DM if you like. I'm mostly active on Instagram. You can find me on the Thought Plantation podcast. You can also find me on Facebook as well. I sort of am there here and there. But if you wanted to sort of DM me with any questions or queries or just anything in general, you can DM me on Instagram where I'm more active. But thank you again for listening in, and yeah, have a good evening, guys.